the SEC, the matchup between Georgia and Kentucky. The Bulldogs laying about 26 points right now, total in the high 50s, around 58. This is Bryan Leonard's best bet. We'll get to that in just a moment. But wanted to get your thoughts on this. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we saw Georgia get rocked by South Carolina 35-7. 2 years ago, they ran a more traditional-based offense. Last year, they switched to the up-tempo with Murray at quarterback, and they had like 250 more plays last year than they did the year before offensively, 10 or more plays per game on average. But they absolutely got shut down by a meaty and mean South Carolina pass rush that kind of changed things around for Murray and the way he approached it pre-snap and during the plays. Wasn't able to read the defenses that well. They hid their man-to-man and their zone coverages quite well. But before that, they were piling up a lot of points. My question to you to start is, does Kentucky have what it takes to attack this Georgia offensive line to throw Murray off his game?
Yeah, that's the thing you've got right here. You've got a Kentucky team that doesn't score a lot of points. But you also have a Georgia team that's, you know, everybody's taking a look at this and they think they're coming off the bye. They're really upset. They've got the cocktail party coming up next week. I can't believe they're going to spend a lot of time on Kentucky, and they're sure they're upset having that big loss. But, you know, who wants any part of Kentucky right now? They're with the Mississippi team looking so much better this year. Kentucky usually had a partner down there at the bottom of the Vanderbilt takes off. They start playing a little better. Mississippi. Kentucky's not going to even be in this conference anymore for football, I'm telling you.
I like what Bryan said before we started shooting videos. We were talking about last week's game where Kentucky was down 49-7 about 5 or 6 minutes into the third quarter against Arkansas. The weather became an issue, and the game was called with Arkansas leading 49-7. And Bryan said they were thinking about getting Coach Cal on the phone and asking him if he'd like to bring a few hoop players out there to score a few points. And the bottom line is, though, for me, is here's Georgia, Marco. Last year, they were a 31-point favorite at home. They're laying right now about 26. The line's come down a couple of points since it opened, laying about 26 on the road. Is it that big of a difference that Georgia is going on the road and this number is, you know, only 5 points below where it was last year when they were at home?
Well, the concern that I would have in here is what's going to be the mental state of Georgia. You know, yeah, you brought out looking ahead to Florida, definitely, but last week was or 2 weeks ago was their first loss, and we talk about the dream crusher scenario. Now, I don't know if Georgia really believed that they could be a national championship contender, but they had a soft schedule this year. They had one of the better routes of the teams.
They still do after Florida, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that was the only big game that they, you know, when you mapped it out, because they avoid LSU, they avoid Alabama, so they should have had a clean run to the SEC championship game, and then you've got one game, anything can happen, and we know that whoever comes out of the SEC championship game generally is playing for the national championship. So they got to be a little bit deflated that that's gone. They got their rival up next with Florida. Even if they get a big lead, you're going to probably want to get some players out, rest them. And how much of your playbook do you want to show? If you put any new wrinkles in with the bye week for Florida next week, I don't think you're going to show anything this week. You're just going to want to get in and get out. So I would be, you know, hesitant to lay points with Florida, but I'd also be very hesitant to want to take points with this Kentucky team because, you know, it's pretty bad. The last 4 games, they got shut out by Florida. They only scored 17 against South Carolina, 14 against Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Like you said, I mean, Arkansas has had so many problems this year, and they got steamrolled 49-7 in, what, 3/4 of a game?
Not even 3/4 of a game. Yeah, exactly. You know what? Something I was going to mention also with this offense, Bryan, and this is your best bet. We'll get to it in just a second. But this Kentucky team is down to a guy who was listed as their 4th-string quarterback in spring football. That's because of all the injuries that they've suffered. So they're really, I mean, I really think this is one of those cases where if Georgia wants to, if they're focused, they name this score. And the only thing saving from Kentucky from a good old-fashioned butt kicking is Mother Nature if it strikes twice.
Right.
But the bottom line is how focused will they be? See, for me, I was hoping they would play well against South Carolina, win that game. I was hoping for 2 reasons. I've got Georgia over the win total of 9.5 this year.
We're still good.
We're still doing all right there. No more losses, though, okay? Yeah. But anyway, the bottom line is that I'm looking at Georgia and I'm thinking if they can get by South Carolina, and then, of course, their next game after this would be against the Florida Gators, this might be a spot where I want to come in and grab all those points. So we've talked about this one enough. It is your best bet, and when we get to that best bet, I want you to tell me and everybody else is why we should trust these Kentucky Wildcats.
If you watch enough of these videos from Marco D'Angelo, he always tells you if it's an easy bet to make, it's a bet you don't want to have. And right now, Who really wants to play Kentucky in this game? But the people I respect, the people betting into the early lines, have already brought this down from 28 to 26. That tells me the Kentucky side's the right side. Georgia, off that bad loss, and then they had the bye week. But the last 5 times they've come out of a bye week, they go 1-4 against the spread. Big game coming up the following week. They haven't covered as a 20-point or better SEC favorite in over 5 years. We'll take the ugly dog here, and there's not much uglier here in Kentucky. We'll take the points with the Wildcats.
I thought he was talking about a couple of guys on the set there for a second. But anyway, I'm going to root for you. I'm going to pass this one because you've sold me enough on Kentucky, but I just can't grab the points right here. But I'll be rooting like crazy for your best bet on this one. I think you make a great argument. He's Bryan Leonard, his best bet on the Kentucky Wildcats. We've got a lot more to come right here at pregame.tv.